If you're struggling with your dog barking at sights and sounds outside of your home, you're not alone. As a dog trainer, it's one of the most common behaviors that I'm asked to help with. I've helped many clients with their dog's window reactivity, but I have a confession. My name is Stephanie, and I am a hypocrite. Despite helping many clients and encouraging them that you can change this behavior with just 10 to 15 minutes of easy training per day, I didn't fix my own dog Nira's window reactivity until recently. In this video, I'm going to show you my exact rewards-based method for solving window reactivity and share why it took me so long to tackle with my own dog.
Yes!
I'm going to be sharing a lot of information in this video, so to make it easier for you, I created a free written summary of everything that I'm going to talk about. I'll share how to grab that free guide later in this video. First, what exactly is window reactivity? I like to explain it as an overreaction to a stimulus outside of the home. It often involves loud, frantic behavior with the dog charging towards the stimulus and barking. Many of my clients struggle with both visual reactivity, where the dog reacts to a sight outside of the window, and also auditory reactivity, where the dog reacts to a noise outside of the home. I strongly encourage training both for the best results. So why does window reactivity develop in the first place? There can be a lot of reasons for it, including barrier frustration, guarding behaviors, prior bad experiences, a lack of socialization, and a fear-based response. The dog's breed can also have an effect, with some dogs being naturally more likely to guard, or other dogs being more likely to have large reactions to stimulus changes. Regardless of the reason of why your dog is barking, this behavior often accidentally gets reinforced. Think about a delivery person coming to your house. They were always going to walk up, drop off your package, and then leave. But in your dog's mind, they may perceive that their barking was what chased that mailman away. This provides a reinforcement loop for the behavior, and it strengthens it because the dog may perceive that their barking worked. It's really important to keep in mind that dogs repeat what works, and I'll show you how to use that principle to your advantage with the upcoming training method. It's also really important to remember that window reactivity isn't bad behavior. As frustrating as it is, your dog isn't trying to be annoying when they bark. It's communication, it's anxiety, and it's instinct. Your dog's perceived overreactions may not make sense to you, but they do to your dog. So as a dog trainer, why is my dog window reactive? I believe that Nira's reactivity is caused by a mix of her breed and also a lack of socialization. She spent her puppy years in a top-floor condo where there wasn't a lot of stimulus outside of our suite, and then a house located in a really quiet area with almost no stimulus, so when we moved into this house in a busier area, I really started to notice her reactivity. However, I still ignored it. Honestly, I don't have a great excuse for why I put it off. I want to say that I was really busy and tired from training other people's dogs, which is true, but also this training is super simple and I definitely could have done it earlier. I guess I'm admitting this because I want to reassure you that if this is something your dog has practiced for a long time, you can still train it kindly. My own dog was 10 years old when I finally started to work on this, so what motivated me to tackle it? I was very pregnant and in my third trimester, and I saw a TikTok video where a woman complained about how much her dog's barking constantly woke up her baby. I instantly envisioned my near future.
She's finally asleep.
I didn't want to feel that level of frustration to my dog, so I suddenly felt motivated to start training. There are 4 things that you're going to need for this training. The first is high-value dog treats, and second is a loaded marker word. I could tell that this video was already going to be quite long, so if you've never heard of a marker word before or loaded one with your dog, please pause this and go watch this quick video. The third thing that you're going to need is a portable speaker, and lastly, it's not necessary, but I do find that you'll get better results if you use a snuffle mat, which I'll talk more about later in this video. There are 2 things that I need you to keep in mind during this training process. The first is that your 10 to 15 minutes of training per day isn't going to do anything to change your dog's overall behavior if they're allowed to rehearse the undesirable reactive behavior the rest of the day. We'll talk more about management options, both sight and sound reactivity, later in this video, but it is imperative that you use tactics to prevent the reactivity outside of training times if you want to be successful. And second, the pillar of rewards-based training is that we need to set our dog up for success so that there is something to reward and build upon. If you start any sort of training at a level that your dog can't handle and therefore they're unable to offer behavior that you want, then rewards-based training won't work because it wasn't used properly. The training method that I use for window reactivity is a bit different than I've seen other trainers do, but it accounts for this important principle and it uses counter-conditioning to train a new calm response. So what is counter-conditioning? The goal with counter-conditioning is to build a positive association with a previously negatively associated stimulus. To put this into human context, let's use the example of me being scared of spiders. Right now, I am not a fan of spiders.
Die!
However, if we properly use counter-conditioning and $100 fell from the sky every time that I spotted a spider, eventually I would be pretty happy to find one. That counter-conditioning and positive association building would never work, though, if we didn't carefully control for the stimulus at a level that I can handle and progress at my pace. For example, if you threw $100 at me every time a spider made me scream, it wouldn't decrease my fear. I'm way too over threshold for positive associations to be built. If instead we started the conditioning at a very low intensity and we gradually progressed at a pace that I could handle, we call this desensitization.
This is fine.
Pairing that intentional exposure with something rewarding to me, such as money, would help me build positive associations to the spiders, and that's counter-conditioning. We're changing my emotional response to the stimulus and therefore how I react to it. For dog window reactivity, we're going to counter-condition both the sight and sound of the stimulus outside of the home with gradual repeated exposures paired with something desirable so that the dog also acts differently. Let's start with sound conditioning first, since that was my dog's main struggle and it's often the skill that I suggest clients start with first. I want you to make a list of any noises outside of the home that you've noticed trigger your dog to react. For my dog Nira, she would bark at 4 main sounds: car doors closing, people talking, the mailbox, and the worst trigger of all was if somebody actually knocked on my door. Walking up to and opening and closing my mailbox has a particular sound, as does my door knocking, so I took video recordings of those noises. For people talking outside of my home or for closing car doors, which tend to be more variable in their sound, I just use sound clips from YouTube. When we're working on sound conditioning to noises outside of the home, there's 2 main difficulty levers that we can manipulate to set our dog up for success: the volume and the pairing. For example, even if my dog saw me knocking on my door, she still barked because she paired that sound in that spot, meaning that somebody's at our house. If instead she heard that same knocking sound while out on a walk, she would react completely differently because she didn't pair it in that context. Because that pairing effect tends to be really strong, I always suggest working on volume first. To build positive associations to these triggering sounds, I use treats. You can just hand the treats to your dog, but I do find it much more effective if you use a pre-filled snuffle mat. There is some research that shows that sniffing helps dogs relax and it lowers their heart rate. The mat also gives the dog a task to do during training because they have to find the treats, it allows for longer sessions, and it offers continuous reinforcement. I personally recommend this snuffle mat because it's affordable, it's thick, and best of all, is machine washable. I've linked it on my favorite items page in the video description if you want to check it out. The first step in sound conditioning is to create a more neutral stimulus for your dog. When you first start training, start with a volume really low and play that sound somewhere away from the door to help break that pairing issue for your dog. In a calm room, press play on that noise clip and then immediately give your dog the pre-filled snuffle mat. It's really important that the stimulus happens before the reward. This conditioning works for 2 reasons. First, your dog starts to associate that previously triggering noise with something positive, and therefore any fear gets replaced. And 2, the snuffle mat helps to offer continuous reinforcement for calm behaviors during that triggering sound, which encourages your dog to repeat that calmness rather than reacting. However, it's really important to start this training at a level that causes 0 stress for your dog. My dog Nira tends to be incredibly sound sensitive, so from a former training session, I want to show you what it looks like if you go too quickly. Here I increased the volume a few levels and she stopped eating. When I increased the sound just a tiny bit more, she actually got scared enough that she walked away from the treats entirely. You will never build positive associations if your dog is this uncomfortable during training. If you haven't heard the term dog threshold before, then I strongly encourage you to watch this video. If you don't know how to read your dog's body language, I do strongly encourage you to hire a dog trainer for even 1 session while they help you out with this. Another option, if you simply don't have the money to hire a trainer, is that during your first session, give your dog a snuffle mat and play that clip with the sound completely off. Closely watch your dog's body language and learn what neutral looks like for your dog, and then try to ensure that it looks like that during the whole training progression once you actually add the noise. If your dog looks up from the mat, if they lose interest in the food, if they tuck their tail, or if they otherwise react in any way, you're progressing the difficulty too quickly. This training should feel very easy, so err on the side of caution and progressively increase the volume at a pace that your dog can definitely handle. Once you can play the sound clips at a volume that's higher than real-world levels without your dog caring, then you can move on to pairing. This is where the training really starts to work. I suggest placing a portable speaker just outside of your door so that your dog thinks it's a real trigger. Again, start with the volume at its lowest level since you've added a new layer of difficulty with the pairing, and then progress as able. Once you can play the sound at real-world levels and your dog still stays calm, I like to start practicing with me outside of the room. If you're enjoying this video, then I would really appreciate if you let me know in the comments. Your feedback really encourages me to keep making more tutorials. For this step, I would place the speaker out on the porch without Nira seeing, and then I would pre-fill a snuffle mat and I'd place it on the living room floor and then let Nira into the room to find it. Right when she was approaching it, I would turn on the noise clip. This helps make it like real life where the sound would catch her off guard and it wasn't associated with me at all. And lastly, add in real events. I asked my husband to start knocking when he'd get home from work. Initially, I still used that snuffle mat, and then I weaned away from the continuous rewards, and I progressed just marking and rewarding her from my hand for staying calm, and then I started working on the same setup, but without me in the room during the knocking.
Yes. Good. Good.
So somewhat ironically, and I don't know if the mic's going to pick it up, but they're doing road construction right outside of my place today, and Nira is completely relaxed. So very good sign. And lastly, as mentioned, it's really important to use management outside of your training sessions to prevent your dog from practicing that reactive behavior. My suggestions for this are to leave music on near your front door to drown out those outside noises, put a sign on your door that asks people to text you rather than knocking, and to try to keep your dog somewhere away from the front door when you're not home. These temporary measures will help establish the new desirable responses to outside noises that you're training. Now, what about reactivity to sights outside of the window? One of the easiest management tactics is to rearrange your furniture so that your dog doesn't have visual access. I actually didn't bother with sight reactivity when I was pregnant because my couch didn't allow Nira to see outside of the window. However, I wanted more space for everybody after Emma was born, and I bought a larger couch, so this then became an issue. Another management option is simply closing your blinds, but some dogs may damage them, so just be careful. My personal preferred tactic instead of blinds is to use window film.
Now, obviously, you're going to use a bigger piece than this, but I want to show you how it works.
Window film is really affordable. It sticks on with just water, so you can easily peel it down during training and then reapply it repeatedly afterwards, and it still allows light to come through. I've linked the brand that I personally use on my favorite items page in the video description. Management is great and you do need to use it, but how do you actually train a calm new response when your dog spots something outside of the window? As a reminder, for positive reinforcement to be effective, there does have to be a desirable behavior that we can reward. But what if the dog barks right away when they spot a stimulus? This isn't like sound conditioning where we can just adjust the volume, so how do you make this work? Everyone finds this suggestion really odd at first, but it really works. Start training by sitting at the window with your dog at a time that you're confident there won't be a stimulus outside. Simply start marking and rewarding your dog whenever they glance out that window, but they stay calm. Staying calm should be easy because there isn't anything outside to set them off. Doing this will feel strange, but it does build a foundation of calmness that you can then build upon with real stimulus exposure. I like to use the engage-disengage method from Leslie McDevitt. To grab the free window reactivity guide that I mentioned earlier that summarizes everything in this video, simply comment "help please" and I'll send you a link. To start using this for window reactivity, you're going to mark the second that your dog looks at the trigger outside and reward them when they glance back at you. Repeat this every time that your dog looks at that stimulus for however long it's in sight.
Yes. 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 Okay.
After a few training sessions, or once that's easy, start adding in a delay where you let your dog watch for 3 to 5 seconds. If your dog voluntarily looks away from that stimulus, mark and reward right away and give them something awesome.
Yes. Yes.
If instead 5 seconds have passed and your dog still hasn't voluntarily looked away from that stimulus, then mark to get their attention and to reward them for staying calm while they did watch that trigger.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes. Yes.
So to recap, start by marking and rewarding glances when there's no stimulus outside.
Yes.
And then practice with a stimulus by immediately marking and rewarding when your dog spots it.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And then progress to auto disengagement.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes. Good boy.
Once your dog is auto disengaging most of the time, then start practicing with you farther and farther away so that their calmness isn't dependent on your presence.
Yes.
I know firsthand how frustrating window reactivity can be, but with consistent training and the proper use of management, you can expect a dramatic improvement in your dog's barking. When this fails, they claim that positive reinforcement... Somebody at my door? Give me 1 second. However, I never believe that we should expect perfection from our dogs, especially for such a multifaceted behavior. So, what should you do in the rare times that your dog might still bark? My preferred intervention is to separately train an immediate orientation to you at the sound of their name using this game.
Yes. Yes.
Then, if your dog barks, say their name to interrupt that barking and get them back to you, and then ask for an easy secondary skill that your dog already knows. I like this tactic because it gives your dog a new task and it distracts them from the original barking behavior, and it makes sure that you don't accidentally reward your dog for that barking. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions. Happy training. I'll see you in the next video.